And now we'll go live. And then I'll shut off the sound. On my timeline. And it's going live. I love how it always it tells me on Zoom before the browser is actually connected to Facebook. Does it do that to you too?
Yeah.
And then we get some feedback. All right, there we go. So we are officially live now with Cori Wamsley of Aurora Corialis Publishing House. And as you know, through my Facebook page, I'm Amanda Kunkel, your universe liaison, and I have invited Cori, who I've known now 3.5 years, something like that. That I've gotten to work in various settings very closely to. Even got to spend a night in her kid's bed. That was awesome. Got to hang out and do a sleepover at Cori's house and sit in her queen chair, which was very gracious of her. And I invited her here to kick off a live series that I'm doing this summer. I figured she was the perfect one because what do you do next to the pool in the summer? You read a book, or you can write your book. I don't know. It's up to you, right? Maybe it depends how old your kids are. So welcome, Cori, the fabulous publisher and editor. And what else do you do over at Aurora Corialis? I feel like your tagline does not include everything that your brilliance is.
I'm also a speaker and an author of 9, soon to be 10 books.
Oh, there's another one coming out. Did I miss this somehow?
I've been trying to, promote all my authors and slip that in every once in a while. Hey, I'm working on this. Hey, I'm working on this. So yeah, number 10 is coming out this fall.
Oh, that's awesome. So which actually that means if you're looking for a book to read by the pool, Braving the Shore, correct?
Yes, of course.
I love that book. I believe I was reading it last year this time, right before it was getting published, because of course I was like, oh yes, I will volunteer as tribute to read your book as you were publishing it. And it is the perfect beachside, poolside, good heart feeling book that actually did have me questioning a couple things till the end. And I was like, oh, well yeah, okay. I didn't really see that coming. Oh my gosh. So congratulations on your 10th book coming out. I'm going to have to get my hands on that when it comes out as well.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited about it. It actually takes place around Christmas. So that's why I'm launching in November.
Got it. Love it. Fabulous.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so you are here. I know we didn't actually plan to talk about your books, but yeah. It's what happens when we get together. It's just right. We go down the rabbit hole of wherever the universe is going to lead us, which is what I was saying earlier today on Facebook when I posted was when you have that yearning in your heart for anything, there's always the way to it. And it always means it's for you. So as you know, for anyone that has had that yearning, oh, I'm supposed to write a book. This isn't your brain being like, oh, I should jump in on the book writing wagon. This is the universe nudging you towards, yes, you're going to make so many people feel good, educate them, be happy. I mean, you know more than nonfiction than I do. So you're here with your 5 keys today. Tell us about them.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to back up a little bit and talk about what you just were talking about, because there's always all this pressure out there for people to be writing a book. And a lot of times people will say, oh, well, I should write a book. My coach said I need to write a book. And you can tell by their energy that they don't want to do it. That's not the time to be writing a book. The time to be writing a book is when you can feel it in here and you're like, they said I should, and I really feel it. I feel like I should. I'm a little nervous about it. That's okay. But that God, I don't want to write a book. That's not the energy you want to be in, because you are not going to write a book that somebody's going to enjoy reading, because your energy comes through in your writing, and it can be just, I mean, if you're annoyed, think about like if you've ever bought a product, or if you've gone to a restaurant and had a crappy meal, and you need to write to someone or talk to someone and say, hey, I'm not happy with this. If you're in that energy of, I just, had a bad meal, that energy comes across in your writing. If you're sending them an email, or if you're doing a review online, everybody knows. They don't have to read the whole review. They can just tell. So please make sure that you have that like excited and happy and, ready to rock kind of energy, even if you have a tough story. And you can do that with a tough story because you anchor into some of the stuff we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. I love that you pointed that out. I wouldn't have thought about that. I mean, because I'm not a publisher. I haven't worked with authors, but yeah, you've probably gotten some of those pages in where you're like, okay, honey.
Yeah.
You had a bad meal before you wrote this chapter, didn't
Yes.
you?
Oh, yes. You argued with your husband, you wrecked your car, whatever it was, it sets you up for writing in that energy. You don't want that.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for pointing that out. And so when people work with you, I know you're giving us the 5 keys here of nonfiction, but do they spend more time working with you, an editor, like whose voice? Because obviously, as we're chit-chatting here, it could easily get somebody out of the vibration, right, of having a bad meal. So I can see how, right, if I booked Aurora Corialis and you were sending me feedback back, it would immediately get me out of that. Oh my gosh, Cori, you're right. I did write that in like a cranky mood.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you so lovingly called me out, and just have it quickly shift.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important. And you can recognize it yourself too. I mean, we all know when we sit down and we're like, I've got to get this done. And you've got that rushed energy too. Like, figure out what works for you to just sit and calm down. And what the best thing I can say is like, close your hands, close your eyes, put your hands over your heart, close your mouth. I always tell my kids, close your eyes, close your mouths, go to sleep. Close your eyes, put your hands over your heart, and really think about the people you're going to impact and how they're going to feel when they get that book in their hands. And if you do that, it totally shifts your energy, because it shifts it away from you and what's going on in your world and into how you're impacting others. And that is, it changes people when you do that. If I'm having a conversation with an author and they're telling me this big, long, scary story, and I stop them and I say, who are you going to help and why? You can just feel the glow come on. I mean, it changes the energy. Oh, I want to help this person because I don't want them to go through what I went through. And I really want to make an impact. I want it to be easier for them. And you can always tell. And that's what lights them up. And that's when I say, that's the energy you write in. Make sure you write a note about that. Just keep a post-it on your computer, whatever it is. So, yeah.
I adore that. I just absolutely adore that. And so, Cori, tell me, is that one of the official parts of the 5 keys of writing, or is that just some extra bonus you threw out to make today juicy?
That's an extra bonus, but to be able to do that, you really have to know the first 2 keys. So
Yeah, share.
we can dive into that. The key number 1 is your audience. And that is, you have to figure out who you're talking to. And it's not just anybody who picks up the book, or your best friends. It's not just your family. This is the people you want to impact. So to figure out who that audience is, you have to look at what kind of challenges you're helping them overcome. Whenever I sit down with somebody at the very beginning of their book, this is the first conversation that we have. What are their challenges? What will they be able to overcome by reading your book? This is, these are the people we want to talk to when we're writing. One of the most important questions you can ask is, what led them to that challenge? Because there's always something that got you into that. You didn't just suddenly wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, this is the life I'm living. No, there's some way that you got into that challenge. If the challenge is the person is in the middle of a divorce, well, clearly they got married and there were some issues within the marriage, whatever that was, that led them to the divorce. If somebody is suddenly, we all feel like, oh my goodness, I was suddenly really sick with, X, Y, Z. There were little things along the way that happened that they maybe missed, that maybe you picked up on in your journey. And those are some of the things that led them to that challenge. So those are going to be major connection pieces later when you're writing. You can write about medical challenges, business challenges, health challenges, I mean, literally anything, and be able to figure out, what led them to that challenge and who are the people who are sitting in the middle of that challenge. So I actually wanted to give them a list of 5 questions that I like to give my authors. So starting out, what led them to that challenge? How do they feel when they're going through that challenge? Because the feeling is majorly important for connecting. What do they need most so they have hope? And I think hope is the most important piece of any book that you're going to write, because if you sit there and you write out this big, long story about how awful things are, and they get to the end and they're like, wow, now I want to go drink a bottle of wine and binge watch a TV series.
The big bottle too.
A big bottle, just stick the straw right in. I mean, you don't want your reader to feel that way. You want them to feel hope. You can connect with them. Absolutely say, I get you, and tell your story, but they've got to have hope. So you have to figure out, what is it your audience needs so they can have hope? What's their big goal? And then also some of the small goals, little goals they can achieve along the way so they feel motivated to push through. And a lot of those are going to be things that you yourself have been through. So tied in with the audience is key number 2, and that's the purpose. And these are the first 2 things we talk about. If anybody is watching this and you've been following me, you will have heard me talk about audience and purpose since I started my business 7 years ago. Audience and purpose, those are the first things you ask people when you're working on something. These are the first things we asked when I used to work my corporate job. Who's the audience and what's the purpose of this piece? And sometimes the answers weren't very clear or good, but as we learned how to ask questions about it, we got better answers. So that's some of the questions that I'm giving you guys, so you can ask better questions.
I love that you just said that, because so many of the women viewing this, and there's probably a couple men too, but my audience is all like businesswomen, right? So they are used to hearing, who's your audience?
Yeah.
What's their special sauce? What's the problem they're looking to solve? What do they need? So this is like almost verbatim, but just aimed towards, so it makes perfect sense why you're speaking about it.
Yeah. If you've done audience exercises for your business, you can absolutely look at those for the book, but the book might be for a segment of the audience. It might be for the people, we're going to get into that, the purpose, but you might be writing something that's going to get people to your programs. It's going to get people ready to work with you. Or you might be writing to the people who are already very interested and they just need to get a little taste of what it's like to work with you. So that's one of the things you have to identify with your purpose. You have to consider what the reader is going to walk away with. What are their wins going to be? What goals can they achieve? I've seen some books out there that read like a sales page, and that is absolutely not what you want. You want it to be a thought piece. You want people to get in, get to know you, understand what you're all about. Because if they're just reading a big long sales page, sometimes they feel a little bit scammed. Oh, well, I thought this was going to help me with this. Well, it didn't help me with anything. And also, that's not the kind of energy that brings people into your world. People will run across your book, if you've published it and put it out on like Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all those things. People are going to run across that book who don't know you. And if they see that and they read the description and they're like, oh, this is going to be great, it's going to be really helpful, and then they don't get help from it, that's just not a way to be leaving people. So we want to make sure that we know what the purpose is while we're writing, before we write the book. That way we write to that purpose, because you're getting your reader toward the goal as well as helping you reach yours. So there's got to be a balance there. You want to write a book, obviously, that works for your brand, but you also want to gently take the reader's hand and lead them down a path that gets them somewhere that they actually want to be. Sometimes it is that like hope. Okay, I see that they've gone on this journey and I have hope now that I can go on a journey as well, because I see that they've gone on this journey and they've reached this, at least somewhat happy point at the end, even if it is a tragic journey. They've gotten somewhere that you want to be. And I've worked on some books that have some really difficult journeys, children passing or breakups of relationships, dissolutions of businesses. And even when it's a challenge like that, you can still reach a point where, the reader has hope. So I hope that helps anyone who is going through a difficult journey and trying to think, how am I going to wrap my head around writing this? Because those can be really challenging to do. And when you are doing this, of course, the balance with your brand. And when I'm saying brand, I'm meaning your business, your nonprofit. Sometimes it's you, if it's just you as the author and a speaker. And this is just the feel that you get from being around that person. Think adjectives. So like when I'm around Amanda's brand has some of that like whimsy and magical quality to it, but it's also very grounded. It's very stable. So it's this very nice balance of stability, but also whimsy and hope and all those things. So I'm not going to identify everybody's brand, but yeah.
Identify away.
Just as an example. But sit back and think about like, what is it that people feel when they're around you? What do you want them to feel? Some of those kind of things as you're thinking about your brand. And I'm, again, explaining that because I know some people in the audience are going, what the hell is she talking about? So yeah, you do want people to come back to your brand because you want them to reach out for more information. You want them to work with you if they need that. And I do want to say too, sometimes a reader will read that book and that's all they needed. And that's okay, because you don't know what that's going to turn into in the future too. That reader may pass that book to someone who needs it and then needs you. It could end up at Half Price Bookstore, and that's how it happens. Someone is in there digging for information, and that's how they find you. I've seen these little snippets happen all over the place. I had an author who she's local to Pittsburgh, and somehow her book was passed around, and a woman in Canada found her and reached out and was like, hey, I got this from a friend who got it from someone else. And that's how she ended up finding, my friend who ended up working with her. So think about those kind of things. You're putting a seed out into the world and letting it grow however it grows. Yeah, so that's purpose.
I love that.
Yeah.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah. Do you want me to keep going with the keys?
Keep going. I know. I was like, I'm going to interrupt you a lot, Cori. And now I'm just like, oh.
Yeah. Okay. So key number 3 is content. So we've moved from the planning phase of your book into the writing phase, because there has to be a before, during, and after when you're considering your book. There's a whole arc. And I know a lot of times we just think about the writing portion, but that before portion and then the content portion. You want to write something that's well structured, well thought out, and develop a connection, because that's really the most important thing, is to develop a connection with your reader. But you want to open up your heart, showcase your journey, and let them see that you're a real person. And I give this example every time I talk because it's just so relatable. One of my authors a few years ago was working on his book, and he was talking about overcoming alcoholism and all the different things he was doing to get himself on this path to being healthy and, focusing on his goals. And one of the things he did was he decided he was going to change his diet, because alcoholism and all the things he was eating with his friends, he wanted to clean that out and focus on feeding his body good things for the path forward. Like, this is fabulous, give it to me. So he's like, well, I cleaned out my fridge, threw out the Chinese food, dumped the pizza. I poured every beer I had in my fridge down the drain. Very symbolic to me. I'm like, this is fabulous. I'm loving this. I had a grocery list from a nutritionist I was working with. I went to the grocery store, packed my cart with all these good foods, brought them home, put them in the fridge. And that's how I started eating. And I'm like, and it's like, yeah, that's how I changed my diet. Like, bullshit. Um, I said, I guarantee that you ordered a pizza a couple weeks later. I guarantee that you were walking past a bar and saw your friends in there and fought yourself to not go in. I guarantee that you didn't eat a salad every meal. You changed some things, but we all backslide. And I want to see that. And when you're working on your book, you have to show that it's a transformational journey and it's messy. You have to let the reader know that you're a real person, because if I'm reading his story and I'm like, oh, look, he moved all the stuff out of his fridge and put new stuff in, and like, wow, now I feel horrible about sneaking a cookie the other night. Like, I feel awful that I was super busy and I had to take my kids out to Wendy's. Like, there was no other option. And I ate fries with my salad. I hate fries. Oh my God. I don't think I want to work with this guy. He's going to, think I'm terrible. This is what you want to get across. You want people to see, like, I slipped up, I had a struggle. It's a challenge. And whenever I show people the story arc that I like to work with, I start out with, you start with stuck, you move on to that aha moment where you need to get help. And I'm drawing the arc in the air here. So you've gone up to, I need help, I need to make a change. The next piece is a wavy piece, because you're doing a back and forth. There is no straight line from I need a change to now I'm perfect. None. And perfect, I don't think it's even on that at all. Yeah.
It's a setting on the dryer, right?
I think it is.
Have you seen that meme? Like, it's a setting on the washer, perfect, or yeah, it's this meme that's like, perfect, that's just a setting on the dryer. That's all that is. It doesn't really exist.
Yeah, no, it can't exist. So you want your reader to see you as a real person, not some high and mighty guru. That's not going to connect with them at all. So you want to hook your audience, lead them into more work with you. And to truly connect, you need to be vulnerable. And we hear that word all the time. It does not mean to just open up your closet and show everybody everything that's inside. It means to be selective about different things that are going to connect, because you've identified your audience and your purpose. So you need to walk through your story and say, people are really going to get that my throat tightened up and I was crying hysterically, and that I was wearing the same clothes I had had on the night before. People are going to connect with that sort of thing. When I gave you those 3 pieces, somebody's been through some crap. And if I'm reading that in a book, I'm going to say, oh my goodness, I remember the moment when I went through that too. So make sure that you are vulnerable. Giving those 5 senses, those kind of things are really going to connect with people in your writing. And making sure you have a solid structure when you start out, having an outline of your whole book, instead of going, well, I'm going to dump this here, I'm going to dump this here, and hopefully they'll figure it out. Like, your audience is not going to figure it out. You have to spoon feed them. Here's what I went through here. Here's what I went through here. Here's the hope in all of that. Looking back, this is how I see it. Whatever it is you need to do, moving through that chronologically, sequentially, whatever it is when you're doing nonfiction, you want to make sure that you're getting through all the pieces and being selective about what you're sharing. And since we're on this topic, I did want to mention too, because people have really tough stories, you don't want your reader to be triggered, especially if they've been through something tough too. So sometimes it helps to tighten up the tough part of the story. I worked with an author whose daughter was murdered, and we had to tighten up that piece. Like, you cannot go in and describe everything that you saw. You can give me a couple things, and you can give me how everyone felt, because that feeling is what we need to connect. We don't need to see the scene. That's going to be disturbing to people who've been through it.
Dropping the book and walking away.
Yeah. And we want people to keep reading. We want them to get the hope from it.
Right. To the other side.
Yeah. And it's like that in a lot of stories. You'll find a piece that is the crux of it, that very tough piece. And then you let people connect there and keep going. This is the hope, because they don't need to go through that again. They need to go through your hope journey. So I just want to make sure we talked about that.
I love that. That's beautiful. And it helps them instead of reopening a wound, it's
Yeah.
also some more closure instead of, haha, like, let's just
Yeah.
get that sucker right back open.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
actually helps the closure and the hope.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, this kind of moves us into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was what stops us from writing. And sometimes it is that journey. It is how tough that is. So, if you are working on a tough journey, I hope that helps you to keep it tight and then follow the hope. And another thing is we worry about other people's judgments so much. And a lot of times it's our judgments on ourselves. And we're just,
Mhm.
saying, oh, I'm sure they're all going to think this. No, that is absolutely not true. And if people are judging you, they aren't your audience anyway. Those aren't the people who need to read that book. So every time you do get into that, like, oh my God, people are going to judge me. I'm going to get an angry face on Facebook. People aren't going to like this. Tell the voices in your head to be quiet. You can delete and block people.
Oh, I love that
Not in
function.
real life.
Oh,
Sadly, not in real life, but you can delete and block them on social media and focus on who needs you. Because every time you shift out of that, as we were talking about at the beginning, when you shift out of that, oh my goodness, this is what's going on, and you shift into this is who I'm helping, that helps you so much. And that can get you back into the writing mode. And yeah, it's just nice to be able to sit back and feel that good energy of I'm helping people and I want them to, have hope. I know we've said hope a bunch, but that's really what this is about. It's having
I
hope.
love yes, and I love how your story arc that you share with your authors, and I know
Mhm.
what this is because, I was in one of Cori's anthologies, so I got to receive the story arc. It was like, "Oh, I would not have thought of that on my own," but when she describes it and puts it out there, it's like, "Oh, well, this is just, like, 10 times easier." And it makes so much logical sense
Yeah.
when you shared it that I was like, "Okay, yeah, we're just gonna get right into this right now." That
Yeah.
that's fabulous. So it takes some of that pressure off of the little mind monkeys that are
Yeah.
worried about being ostracized or have somebody poke at something that was very painful to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so much easier to be given some sort of structure instead of being told, go write your story. So sit down and work on the structure first, definitely. And if anybody needs that story arc, that's something I share openly. So if
Oh,
if they want it and they comment below, I'll send it to them. Yeah.
oh, awesome. Yes. And if you are here live or on replay and have questions for Cori, please put them in the comments box. I'm keeping an eye on that for you. But yeah, you can get that story arc. Woo.
Yeah. So moving on to number 4, key number 4, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see nonfiction authors make. It happens a lot when they are not working with a publishing house. A lot of people try to do everything on their own. No judgment. If that works for you, great. Once we get to the end of writing a book, I know I am exhausted. And usually it's like, okay, done. Well, obviously you have to go through the editing process and everything. There are so many pieces to publishing a book that by the time people get to the launch, sometimes I see them just shut down. And that is really where you need to push through because you've done all this back end stuff. And now you have a book. And this is the time to be getting people excited about it. So one of the things I saw that I just want to share because it is kind of funny, but it's also tragic. So you imagine this perfect launch day where you let everybody know about your book. I had somebody once do basically a flash mob. So you guys know what a flash mob is. All of a sudden, people show up, there's music, they dance, and you're like, oh, well, they're dancing right now. This is awesome. Maybe I'll dance with them, maybe not. Okay, I don't know the song. So they're flash mobbing, and then it's over. And you had just this like, oh, that was cool moment. And that was it. And the way they did this book launch was a flash mob. Let's not say anything until launch day. Like, first of all, rules of marketing. If somebody's not seeing this a whole bunch, you're not getting them interested in what you're doing. So please do not flash mob people with your book. Build up to the launch, talk about it, share that cover, share your inspiration, talk about everything you possibly can to get people interested, because you don't want to drop it on them and be like, everybody go buy my book. They have no interest in it.
Would it be wrong to call it sort of like a striptease, but with your clothes all on?
Yeah, it is. It basically is. It's like, whoop. It's basically like suddenly flashing someone, which is
Several times.
like, here we go.
Oh,
Yeah. But no, what you were saying was the build up. Yeah, it's basically a striptease. You could easily say it's a striptease. So like, here's a glove, here's a shoe. What's coming next? Yeah, I mean, you can do it that way too. I had an author who just launched her book who basically did that with the cover. She had the cover up and she had it had like a peel down sort of thing.
yeah.
And every couple days she showed a little bit more of the cover. So you got to see little snippets of it and get excited about it. Yeah.
That's fun. I like that one.
It is.
We have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, that was actually, I think one of her daughters did that for her. She was working on her social media and was just revealing a little bit of the cover. That was clever. I liked that one. But yeah, you have to let people know before you launch it. It's just like anything that is advertised. You need to see it a few times and kind of like, oh no, what is this? I'm curious about it. I've heard any number of touches before people buy, 7 touches, 9 touches, whatever it is. Make sure people are familiar with it. And usually that's with posting on social media, booking podcasts, get it out into the world so people don't go, oh, there's a book. Congratulations. And then nothing else. You want them to support that. I could talk and talk and talk about it. But basically, nobody wants to launch to crickets. Nobody wants to put their book out and just have everybody go, great job, really proud of you. And that's it. You want people to be excited about this book, understand what the journey was. And again, it's that vulnerability piece. You have to open up and actually talk about it. And sometimes authors are worn out or they're still a little nervous when they finally get the, actual physical copy. It's like, oh, this is a real thing with my name on it. And now I'm scared. Don't be scared. The whole point was to impact people. So
right.
Yeah. Did you want me to move on to number 5?
I think so. Do you want
Okay.
to?
Yeah.
Are we
People
going
have
to use number
questions.
5 here?
I didn't know if people had questions or.
No, not yet.
All right. Okay, so we'll do number 5. Number 5 is longevity. So you had the idea for the book. We talked about audience and purpose. We talked about the content of the book. We talked about the launch. This is after the launch. So the whole point of writing a book, as I said, is to get people to be impacted by it. They need to read it. Once you have birthed the book, you have to actually take care of it. It's a lot like a kid. That book needs goldfish crackers. That book needs taken to the park. That book needs, a chat with a teacher at school. That book needs to be taken care of. If you just put the book out and you don't do anything, then nothing is going to happen. Just because your book is available, and I think this is kind of a misconception too. Just because your book is available out there does not mean that it's going to sell. There are so many books on Amazon that just get no sales at all. There are books on Amazon that authors work for sales and they still don't get a lot of sales because it's not in front of the ideal audience or it's not getting out and about enough. I always tell my authors not to just rely on the online sales too, that they want to take it with them when they are out and about, if they're at a networking event, whatever. Make sure that that book is still making its rounds. You don't want people to forget about it. So, if you are obviously be pitching for interviews constantly, talk about the book in the interview. We saw at the beginning of this discussion, like I mentioned, I'm an author, I have 10 books, and that's what we talked about. I talk about my books on every interview. Sometimes I give examples because it's, my personal writing and this is my wheelhouse. I talk about what it's like to write a book personally, because that's going to help people. And then that's an obvious transition into oh, well, what book do you have coming out? What are you working on? Um, Figure out some way that you can work your book into every interview because it's important. And, don't be shy about asking, hey, did you want a I can't think of the word, a picture of the book that you can put in, in advertising whenever you're promoting the interview. Some people are cool with that. Be sure that you are talking about it because you want people to read it. You can do book tours, get on podcasts, do author panels, reach out to media, be a speaker at schools. Like there are so many different ways that you can keep giving this book legs, that writing a book doesn't have to be hey, I wrote this book and now everybody's making a lot of noise around it and then it's done and I'm on to my next project.
Right.
You can even, I guarantee that everybody knows another business owner that has a book. So team up with them, get on and talk about your books, talk about what the topics are, show your books. It's a physical product. So it's an easy thing to be like, here it is. I have my book right here. Super simple for people to do that and, sell the book. Because what was the point of writing the book if you aren't selling it? And I'm going to tell one of the tricks that one of my authors uses. So she was in an anthology, which is a group book, and it came out last summer. The anthology has, I think, like 20 people in it. So it was a decent amount of authors. She was not the one leading the book. She was just one of the authors in the book. She sells copies of this book all the time because she takes it with her. If she goes to the coffee shop to work, she takes a copy of the book with her. She'll hold it in line. She'll set it down on the table while she's there working. Sometimes she'll flip it open and look at something in it. Because, sometimes she wants to refer back to her chapter for something or whatever, or sometimes she's just doing that. People ask her about it. If she's in line, people say, oh, what are you reading? And she's like, oh, I'm in this book. And then, oh my goodness, you're in a book. You're an author. Wow, what's your story? People ask her about it. Half the time she ends up selling it to the person next to her in line.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm like, that is the most genius tactic because she's built a connection with them. She's doing it in real life, and then they're interested in getting the story, so they buy the book. And I'm an introvert, so that's not something that works for me. But if I already know somebody, or if I feel comfortable, I'll mention that. I'll drop it. A couple days ago, I was at the orthodontist with my youngest, and we were getting ready to leave. I had a book with me because I read while she's at her appointment. The orthodontist said, oh, what are you reading? Is that good? We talked about it for a minute. She's like, I'm going to the beach soon. I want to write that down. So she jotted it down. And I told her, all the books I've read by this author are good. Here's another one. And she's like, do you know anything else? Any other books? And I said, actually, Braving the Shore by Cori Wamsley. It's really good. And I thought she would get it right away. She just looked at me for a second. She's like, wait a second. I said, that's actually my book. Yes, I was joking, but she's like, wait, I didn't know you were an author. I'm like, yeah, I said, I am. Now I could have said I have copies in the car, but I didn't want her to feel pressured. And so I was like, well, just let her go look. But, that was another seed I planted. Maybe you want to read this book. Like, here it is. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But you're not going to be able to sell books if you aren't talking about it, letting people know about it. And half the time you get that reaction that I got. Oh my goodness, you're an author? I didn't know that. Because this is a fun stat. 1 in every 8,000 people is an author.
Oh.
Yeah. So 1 out of every 8,000 people. So if you look around you, if you look in the business world, obviously a lot more people there. It's pretty thick with authors. But if you're just out and about, if you're just looking around, 1 in 8,000 people. I mean, bring your book with you everywhere you go.
Mommy play dates.
Yeah. Just happened. Oh, look what fell out of my bag. No, I always have a box in my car because you never know. And somebody might say, you know what, where can I get that? I have some in my car. If you're interested, no pressure.
I'm sorry, like you're opening up your trunk, you're like right here.
Climb in. No.
Yeah, I was like, that's a fun visual.
Yeah.
Come to my car.
But I always have some in my book, and I have a lot of books. So I always keep like 3 or 4 copies of every book just in case, because you just never know. Yeah. So that's pretty much what I had. I will say that if you're working with a hybrid publisher is like what we do. There are parts of this that might be handled already. So, make sure that you're talking to them about it, as far as, the distribution and the launch stuff, all of those kind of things. And they're going to have advice for you, hopefully. I know we always advise our authors on that stuff, but just in case you're working on your own, or if you want to bring this to the table with your publishing house, then make sure that you are asking questions, because, you want that book to sell. Just because it exists does not mean it's going to sell.
That is very true. I love how you put that in there, because it's right. You like birth it out and then you're like,
yeah. Whoops.
Right. Well, you're so writing is this creative genius zone.
Yeah.
And then switching, like, oh wait, there's more. Oh wait, there's more.
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand it can be really daunting for people, especially like that's not my favorite thing to do. Putting myself out there. I would much rather be at my computer writing the books, but you need to get used to talking to people about it and, explaining the journey and getting excited about who you're helping. I did work with an author last year who we got clear to the end and she's like, oh, but I don't want this to be about me.
That's so good.
I wrote a book. It's kind of about you. And I'm like, all right, you switch gears. I'm like, who are you helping? Who are you helping? Every time we talk to you, every time you get on an interview, that is who you're focusing on. And I think that really helped her because she did fine. We did her interview and she did fine. And I was like, you're thinking about who you're helping. That's really, it's a game changer. So you have to get out of your head and be like, for me, I write fiction, so it's a little bit different, but I'm like, you know what? She needed a book for the beach. I am helping her by suggesting this book. Also, it's kind of funny because it's funny to be like, oh, what about my book? But, you find a way to approach it that makes you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And what do you, because it's summer now, right?
Yeah.
What do you have coming up as far as availability to work with you?
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of books that are being launched this year. So we're pretty much booked for launches clear through November. Usually when I work with people, I'm open to starting with people. So if somebody is interested and they want to reach out, I'm happy to talk to them. We have 3 entry points, either with our ghostwriter, who is instantly going to be very booked up. So it might be next year before she's available, but with our ghostwriter, with coaching, which is available now, either private or group coaching, as well as with editing. We bring people in with the editing piece and continue through all the steps through publishing. If you do coaching, it's a 5-month program, so you wouldn't be able to publish this year anyway. It usually takes about 8 to 9 months from the start of coaching through releasing the book.
Yes, it's right. And that's wonderful because so often we can think of like, oh, it's this quickly done thing. And it's like, well, it's kind of a process.
Yeah. Yeah. And as somebody who like this is my wheelhouse, writing books, I have taken 6 weeks to write a book. I've done that a couple times. And that's fine. So some people don't like to work with the coaching program because of that. But I find that most of my authors do need 5 months because they need to have that piece at the beginning where we're sitting down and saying, what's your audience? What's your purpose? How are we going to handle this? Let's do your book layout. And then working through the process. A lot of new authors, they really need to take longer because if you say, all right, 6 weeks, I can get a book done, you're marking a lot off your schedule. I mean, you think about, let's say you're writing a shorter book and it's 25,000 words. I mean, think about 6 weeks, 25,000 words. Let's think about 6 weeks at 24,000 because that divides evenly. But you're talking about 4,000 words a week, sitting down and writing 4,000 words a week. And that can be tough. I know when I wrapped up the book that's coming out this fall, The Treasures We Seek is the name of it. The last 10,000 words I did in 10 days. And it was because I was so driven And I was basically like, everybody back off. My door's over here. That's why I'm like, everybody back off. I have to get this done because I felt that it needed to be birthed. It had to be done. I was at the back end and I had to get the rest of the story written. If you're somebody like that, great. But for most people, 4,000 words in a week is a lot. And if you have other responsibilities, you have clients, you have family, you have a vacation, you know, somebody gets sick, that kind of stuff, it can be hard to push yourself for that. So if you are setting goals and trying to do it on your own, give yourself some grace. For starters. Set goals, but make sure that they're reasonable goals. I don't recommend everybody out there write 10,000 words in 10 days. That is probably crazy, but because of the way I write, it's so stream of consciousness, you know, brain to fingers, very quick, almost channeling type of writing that works for me. So, yeah.
Now, Mary Ann just asked, how do you work through the fear?
A lot of it is anchoring into who you're helping. Every time you start feeling that fear, even write it down. I have authors who have been like, write it down, put a post-it on your computer. Every time you sit down, you read that. This is who I'm helping. We did an exercise with one who was really like amped up about this. Like, I cannot get this out of my head. I'm like, going on Canva, we're creating an avatar, basically, a profile for your reader. And I had her pick out a picture of a person who looked like somebody who needed her story. We put the person on there. We wrote a little bit about that person and what they'd experienced. I mean, we made up a person and had her print it out and like, put this beside your computer every day. You want to look at her. This is, you know, Katie. Katie needs your help because of this. This is what she's going through. And, you know, Katie got her help. So whatever it is that you need to trick your brain into letting you do it. Be open and creative about it. Creating a reader avatar is great. Just having a sticky note that says, this is who I'm helping is great. Even going online and being like, you know, hey, I'm thinking about writing this story, you know, who has something similar that you know, this would resonate with you. See if people will comment, because sometimes people will open up and say, oh my goodness, you've been through this. I've been through it too. Because we want to naturally support each other. That's human nature. Yeah. So see what works for you. And, you know, I'm always open to bouncing ideas around with people too.
I love that. Mary Ann says, love that. That's beautiful. And so the instant sort of way to get some even more guidance from Cori right now is just a comment that you would like that story arc. And she will make sure to get that over to you. And of course, ask any questions on replay. I'll make sure to tag Cori so you can tag her too, that she can look around. But before we head out, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, if you're thinking about a story and it's really pulling on you, make sure you get it written. You know, you're not just checking the box. If you feel like you're just checking the box and moving on, that's a chore. We only check the box on chores. You mop the floor, you put your clothes away, you write a book. No. Write a book comes from your heart.
Right.
Yeah. And then if anybody needs me, I'm on social media everywhere, is Cori Wamsley, and also AuroraCorialisPublishing.com.
Oh yeah, post your links. Yeah, when we get off here, post your links on the comments here so people can just pop right over easily. Beautiful. Right. Thank you so much for coming today, Cori, and for sharing from your heart. And of course, with the laughs and giggles, because, you know, otherwise life's boring. So sending you all so much love, and we'll speak again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And I think we're off. Did the little live stream thing go away?